So let's get that started. And so the first opportunity to get it started, I get to introduce our first keynote, Mr. Barry LePatner. Barry's a recognized thought leader in the construction industry. He's co-author in 1982 of Structural and Foundation Failures and the author of Too Big to Fall, America's Falling Infrastructure and the Way Forward, and as you saw Danny present, Broken Buildings, Broken Budgets. As an author and attorney with over 35 years of experience in the construction industry, he brings a special understanding of engineering, business, and legal issues that are a tenet to the design and construction process. He's recently launched an industry-disrupting technology called Arizoo. It's a cloud-based platform that enables architects, engineers, design professionals to organize and specify products, retain firm product knowledge, and collaborate with team members and experts. If you haven't heard about it, maybe you should. Barry's been repeatedly recognized as a super lawyer and one of the nation's leading advisors to corporate and institutional clients, design professionals, real estate owners. Please help me welcome Mr. Barry LePatner.
Lost my thing. Wayne, thank you very much. It's great that I already have misplaced my remote, so let me relocate it before the technical people tell me I'm doing something not right. I think that did it. Wayne, thank you very much for the very kind introduction, and it really is a distinct pleasure to be here before so many industry leaders and people who are truly committed to the best performances for a project and construction across our nation and across the world. It is an audience that I am very, very pleased and excited to be in front, because the message I want to deliver is consistent with the message of this conference. I saw that the conference says, we want to lead the performance revolution. And it's interesting for the construction industry to use the word revolution, because to me, construction and revolution is an oxymoron. And so I'm pleased to be here today to be talking with all of you about perhaps starting a small revolution that will bring the industry forward into the 21st century and benefit everybody in this audience. A long time ago, as a young lawyer, I had just resolved a construction dispute which had involved cost overruns, design errors, everything that could go wrong on a project. And because the architect, the contractors, the owners all had great experience in the field, I felt it was incumbent upon me to sit down and talk to them and ask them about just what they thought had gone wrong on the project to make for the problems that they had all experienced and we'd all resolved after painstaking time and effort. And more importantly, I wanted to ask them if all of those problems could be avoidable. As I sat with each one of them, the architect first, then with the contractors, then with the owners, I asked them, how do you explain this? How do you understand why this kind of problems persist all the time? And in turn, each of them shook their heads, shrugged their shoulders, and told me that's just the way it is in this business. Well, decades have passed since then, yet the construction world persistently struggles in its resistance to adopt the norms of productivity and advanced technology typical of every other industry in the world. So this morning, I want to focus first with you on the reasons for this historic resistance to change. And secondly, I want to explain why the advent of the latest technology that is now available will enable the design and construction industry to find itself on the cusp of major breakthroughs that will make the industry one of the most dynamic economic powerhouses of the global community. There are few today in our industry who believe that the current way we build and design is satisfactory. What architect feels good about being told to issue incomplete design documents on a fast-track project which are guaranteed to generate hundreds or thousands of RFIs and change orders that will delay the scheduled completion date and drive up the final cost to the owner? What construction executive hasn't had the experience of facing the uncertainties of the competitive bid process, knowing that some competitor, desperately needing the work, is prepared to bid at or below cost with no likelihood whatsoever of attaining a profit over the next 2 years of work? And if you're an owner, knowing that it is your carefully prepared budget and hard-earned dollars being put into play, with every likelihood that the final cost and schedule in your contract will increase by 10 to 30% or more, well, you're going to be living the next few years with a great deal of uncertainty about a process over which you will have very little control. That's not the great industry that we want to pass on to our next generation. We can and must do better. But in order to do so, we must begin to improve efficiency, develop enhanced collaboration skills, and for the first time, create a business climate where we can ensure a fair profit for contractors relative to the enormous risks that they undertake. So today I want to stand before you and tell you with certainty that with the advent of the new technologies I want to be discussing in a few minutes, in 10 years, by 2025, we're going to begin to see a substantial reduction in unwarranted cost overruns that plague most projects today. We're going to see notable increases in labor productivity that will lead to increased profitability for both the design and the construction community, and a reallocation of risk where owners no longer seek to hold contractors responsible for everything that goes wrong on a project. Consider the tide of history that the construction industry is running up against. We need only look at the agricultural industry following the arrival of tractors, combines, and scientific farming methods. A century ago, about 30% of Americans and their families, 30%, worked on farms. Today, the United States is the world's largest exporter of agricultural products, even though the sector employs just 2% of Americans. That's technology and productivity at its best. And in recent years, for more current examples, we've seen how Blockbuster Video and its brick-and-mortar stores were obliterated by the advent of Netflix and its streaming capability. And let's not scoff at what Uber and Lyft are doing to the age-old taxi industry. So why is it important for both the design world and the construction world to adapt to new technologies? Well, here's some really important information stressing why we've got to move in this direction. The true cost of a construction project inefficiency has a real material impact on our nation's economy. The data clearly shows that a lack of productivity negatively impacts the entire design industry. There are studies, many of them, showing that construction efficiency or inefficiency has 25 to 50% of waste in coordinating labor on projects and in managing, moving, and installing materials. There's a term called interoperability, and that is the ability, the opportunity, and the data collection that occurs at the beginning of a project when the owner transfers all the needs for a project onto the design team as to their hopes and aspirations for the final product at the end of the project. And that information is massive in nature. And it's supposed to be incorporated into the project documents, passed on to the collaborators, such as all the consultants, passed on from there to the contractors, the subcontractors, the vendors and suppliers, and then end up in the final product where the owner has the benefit of all that data. Well, it is truly, truly amazing the fall off of that data accumulation as the project proceeds. And that's called interoperability. And what we found in the industry is the goal of interoperability is the seamless integration of systems, capable by exchanging and interpreting data amongst the members of the design and construction team to that finished product for the owner. Well, losses of that data have been computed and show between $15.6 billion and $36 billion a year. That's a massive fall off of valuable information. And owners bear 2/3 of those costs. So if we're going to be able to achieve something important in that area, we're going to have a free exchange of data across compatible technology platforms so that at the end of the day, the owner receives a better product. A report by your own Construction Industry Institute shows that contractor rework costs on a project conservatively are estimated to be $15 billion a year. That adds 2 to 20% of the expenses to a contractor's bottom line. Truly something that can be improved upon. And finally, and this is exemplary of a lot of the problems that we have, the industry spends $4 to $12 billion a year on resolving disputes and claims that occur during the course of a project. Well, in the US, technology innovation across all industries has led to an 8-fold increase in worker productivity. In the manufacturing sector alone, in the last 20 years, productivity has nearly doubled in the last 20 years. But the construction industry has seen worker productivity remain flat. We're seeing no increases in efficiency in a way that benefit the industry or the eventual project owner. So if the need for improvement has been well documented, why the difficulty introducing change in an industry that should be welcoming every advance in productivity? Here's some thoughts for you about why the resistance to that change. The National Research Council of the National Academies listed several root causes that I want to share with you that make it difficult for the industry to evolve. First thing is, there's a high fragmentation in the construction industry. 81.8% of all of the workers that work in our industry are working in firms of 20 people or less. This small mom-and-pop nature of the business has implications because small firms can't amass capital to put into research and development. They can't spend the money to buy advanced technology. And of course, most of all, they can't afford to take risks, so they stay in the same place throughout the history of our industry. There is a diverse type of fragmented stakeholders in our industry. We have owners who have their agenda. We have design professionals, they have their agenda. We have contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, operators, and even regulators throughout not only the states, but also in individual cities, who make it difficult for everybody to kind of get onto the same page, to talk the same language, and therefore allow us to make concerted and constructive dialogue possible to improve how we operate in this industry. And as I'm going to shortly explain to each of you, whether you're an owner, a design professional, or a construction executive, none of us can afford to ignore the sweeping changes that are occurring outside our world in a global community where dynamic, exciting things are happening and which are slowly beginning to pervade the world of the design, construction, and real estate industries. So let me talk a little bit about the problems we face. At the heart of all cost overruns which plague every project are the design documents that construction teams are expected to build from. As every contractor knows all too well, the most common situation is design documents that are replete with errors and omissions and lack of needed coordination between the design team members that leads to hundreds, if not thousands, of RFIs, which lead to change orders that cost owners 20, 40% or more over the contract price. Moreover, whenever we hear that word fast-track project, we need to know that design documents are being put out to bid at 65 to 75% completion. 35% of the document information needed to build the building is missing because somebody, somewhere along the line, said, wouldn't it be great if we started to go into the ground before we completed the design? Now, whoever conceived of that was either brilliant or an evil genius, because there has never been in the history of this nation, and I'm waiting for somebody to come forward and tell me, a project that started 4 months early into the ground before the design was completed and was finished 4 months early. And if you're one of those people, please come up. I'd like to put that into the next edition of my book. But you're going to be the exception, like those statistics, 0.000001 of all of the projects, which unnecessarily, for not giving the design community an extra month or 2 or 3 to finish a complete and coordinated set of design documents, the chance to make the construction world's life easier and the owner make sure that their budget numbers are met. This impact on this is very serious. The $1 trillion we spend every year on construction results in over $120 billion in unwarranted cost overruns, a hit on our economy that we can ill afford. McKinsey & Company did some research, and they looked at many mega billion-dollar transportation projects, all those big tunnels and bridges and things that we know of as the mega projects, airports. And they found 98% of these projects suffer cost increases of 80% over the original contract value, 80%. And more than 3/4 of those projects took at least 40% longer than initially scheduled. By requiring the design team to prepare complete and coordinated designs, inclusive of product specifications that must be fully detailed and coordinated for contractors to know what they're building, as opposed to guessing or asking for information that delays the construction process, we can have every project avoid the fate of late delivery and increased costs. There are moments in time, now made famous by the author Malcolm Gladwell in his book, The Tipping Points, that represent the moment when transformation of previously unaccepted ideas or products or messages begin to spread in the same way that viruses do. Things otherwise unexplainable happen and spread in contagious fashion because a small number of people with impact start behaving differently, and once that behavior begins to spread, we find that attitude begins to force these other people to act accordingly. As Gladwell spells it out, the tipping point is the moment of critical mass, the threshold, the boiling point, which is what happened to the introduction of the fax machine in 1984 when Sharp brought it to the market, and to the cell phone as it became smaller and smaller throughout the 90s. Today, the business case for smart building is slowly growing and is going to become a very, very dominant mindset amongst the owner world and hopefully filter down to the construction world and the design world at the same time. According to experts, construction spending on technology, which today is about $6.3 billion in the construction world, in the next 4 years will become $17.4 billion, a compound annual growth rate of nearly 23%. A recent report titled Business Strategy, Global Smart Building Technology Spending in the next 5 years through 2019 said the most aggressive adoption of technology in the construction industry is going to be in the Asia-Pacific area, Western Europe, and North America. As ENR said in an article last year, technology isn't the answer. The answer lies in how technology is used. So let's look at the several ways that within the next 10 years, the real estate design and construction community is going to take steps to increase productivity with the use of new technology. For over 20 years, robots have been a mainstay in other industries by taking on physically difficult, dangerous, or dirty jobs, such as welding, spray painting in the auto industry. Robots were initially very expensive, not to mention bulky, and the need to be bolted to the floor, and they were even fenced off for the safety of workers. Today, advanced robots have acquired the senses of touch and sight, extreme dexterity, and intelligence. They already, in the construction world, take on dangerous and dirty and labor-intensive projects, such as inspecting and cleaning underground pipes, cleaning office buildings, and collecting trash. Oh, I told my assistant not to include this slide, so let me move past this a second. We were onto robots for a while, and he couldn't help himself. As productivity has been proven, robots have led to advances such as artificial intelligence, machine-to-machine communication, they talk amongst themselves, sensors, and actuators. Robots are being readily programmed for many construction tasks that are common, such as installing steel studs in sheetrock, laying bricks, as well as cleaning and maintenance. Not only that, the technology is being extended to new types of robotic prosthetics. These are called exoskeletons, and you put yourself, fit them onto your back, you fit them onto your hands, and across your belt, and what you find is that construction workers can now use heavy equipment across a project site without constant interruptions to deal with fatigue. Robotics shortly, and this goes to the heart of an industry issue, will enable workers with limited mobility, workers that would otherwise be unemployed or disabled, to function normally, helping to keep these partially disabled workers off the disability rolls. More importantly, for some of you who are worried about whether the prospect of robots in your lives is not going to happen because of the cost, you should know that a new report from the Boston Consulting Group projects that by 2025, the average manufacturing employer will pay 16% less on labor by replacing human employees with robots. Labor costs will go down. Today, commonly used industrial robots with features such as machine vision and high precision dexterity typically cost $100,000 to $150,000 each. In 5 years, by 2020, that cost is estimated to go down to as little as $50,000 a robot. The need for the design and construction industry to evolve into a single model, efficiency-oriented operation is going to be the focal point of the next few decades. Make no mistake about it. This is where some firms are already gravitating. Modular home builders and design build companies such as Toll Brothers are well on their way to perfecting this model. These companies have known for some time that by combining high-quality design with the identifiable benefits of manufacturing building components off-site, they are able to provide a controlled environment that improves quality as well as improves worker safety. So what Wayne was talking about, worker safety being preeminent in the minds of everybody in this room, modular, prefabricated construction does a great job of lowering those situations. One of the pioneering leaders of this effort is a company you may not have heard of called DIRTT, D-I-R-T-T. It stands for Doing It Right This Time. This is a company which has revolutionized interior construction with its unique software that sends designs approved by its clients direct to its own factories for fabrication and delivery and installation by its own skilled workers at the project site. This type of construction has already proven to shave months off typical interior projects. The next innovation is right around the corner. One of the most dramatic changes sweeping some and eventually all industries is the advent of cars, trucks, and aircraft that are completely and partly autonomous. The critical importance of this new technology as a means of ensuring timely product deliveries is crucial to the construction industry in terms of improving efficiency. How about some statistics to put this subject into perspective? 1 million plus. That's the number of miles driven by Google's autonomous cars in recent years, with only 11 accidents. The 11 accidents were all caused by other cars who probably were amazed to see an autonomous car driving through the street. They have never had an accident, and they've driven 1 million plus miles. What this means for the construction industry is that drivers will not be hired merely to make deliveries to and from project sites and distribution points. Think about the enormous implications for vehicles that will automatically program the most efficient routes to a project site via software, go around any congestion, get there quickly, waste less gas or hopefully electricity. And the software will be embedded in their frames, eliminating safety concerns while providing total control over product deliveries to meet project budgets and schedules. Autonomous cars and trucks will also lead to reduced CO2 emissions, more worker time for drivers, because with hands-off driving, they could be doing something else in the car insofar, or the truck, insofar as the efficiency of the project, and it will enable them to lead to increased bottom line profitability for every project. That's going to be a major change in the next few years. And the companies that sign on to this early are going to achieve those levels of efficiency earlier than their competitors. And then there are drones. Drones are not just for the military or hobbyists anymore. Tokyo-based Komatsu has made a major commitment to the use of drones throughout its large domain of projects. Facing a shortage of workers, Komatsu said, no problem. We're using drones and driverless bulldozers to do some of the work. Need to bring down costs because of expensive excavation projects? No problem. The company is committed to use drones and unmanned excavators that move along pre-programmed lines of communication based on 3D models of the terrain that have been scanned in by drones that send images to the computers. Why the impetus to invest heavily in the latest high-tech gadgets? Komatsu's president of Smart Construction, He had a simple answer. He said, we have to improve productivity. Well, the Federal Aviation Administration has already issued 850 exemptions for commercial use of unmanned aerial vehicles. A study of 711 of these showed 25% of them were for utilities and energy infrastructure sector work. 24% were for real estate, and 14% for construction. That number will undoubtedly be rising. Here's the next thing right at hand, ready to go. Most of us by now have heard about 3D printing. Maybe it was from hobbyist friends, or we've been hearing that 3D printing presents a security risk from plastic guns that can't be detected at TSA security stations in our airports. Well, the real value of this new technology may well prove to be one of the most significant advances for the design and construction industry. With an expanding range of materials and rapid price declines, 3D printing has matured to the point where today, a bridge in Amsterdam is currently being designed using this new technology. And because 3D printing can transform an idea directly from a 3D design file to a finished part or product, productivity is gained by skipping many traditional manufacturing steps. Most significantly, 3D printing enables on-demand production with significant implications for supply chains and reducing the need to stock spare parts, a major cost for manufacturers and a significant time-saving mechanism for future construction projects. Well, when you really want to get into the connectivity of things, there's nothing like talking about something which is known as the Internet of Things. Now, there's a phrase for you, but it's going to become commonplace in our lives very shortly. The world of design and construction is largely one of physical objects. In every other industry today, machinery, shipments, infrastructure, devices are being equipped with network sensors and actuators that enable them to monitor their environment, report their status, receive instructions, and even take action based on the information they receive. That is the Internet of Things, the connectivity of things that would have been unimaginably connected 10, 15, and 20 years ago. More than 9 billion devices around the world are currently connected to the Internet, including computers and smartphones. That number is expected to increase in the next decade from 45 billion to 1 trillion devices. So this is going to happen around us, whether the industry accepts it or not. But let's talk about accepting it. If the construction industry can embrace design build as never before, then the Internet of Things has the most importance of anything to our future lives. Owners, designers, construction managers, large and small, can design projects down to the inclusion of individual product selection. And with new software products, like the one Wayne mentioned, I've been fortunate enough to co-found, called Arizoo, software will enable everyone to select products that will go right into the CAD design, BIM design, implicitly align itself as part of the project documents, and we will have design build that seamlessly can go from design straight through to completion of the project, where every part, every material, every kind of labor associated with the installation seamlessly will be able to be understood and completed in a coordinated fashion because of the Internet of Things. Let me talk about another term you may not have heard of, but which is going to integrate every one of your lives within a short period of time. It's called big data. And big data is going to drive wise construction. in every other industry you would go to talk to business leaders, you'll find that they spend a good percentage of their time talking about the metrics that impact their business operations. What these leaders are focused on is data, and the data is referred to as big data, and I'll tell you why. This is the data that covers the spectrum of who their customers are in every aspect of their customer life. This is the data that covers their competitors and what their competitors are doing and not doing and how they get the leading edge on their competitors. This is the data that discusses the spectrum of the demographics of the areas they operate in and the demographics of the areas that they hope in the future to be operating in. It's about the nature of the data that they retain and then, of course, being smart enough to hire the smart people around them to tell them what to do with that data. Picture this. Imagine your company is chasing after a $2 billion oil refinery. If your competitor has figured out a way to leverage the data generated by that owner and the oil industry that enables them to win over the hearts and minds of the prospective client, showing that they understand the configurations of the problems that the client has and how they're going to help overcome that client because they understand the big data that's behind all those problems, well, if you're not equipped to compete on this level, the odds clearly are not going to be in your favor to get that project. But it's sure going to make you think about what you've been missing out on for the next couple of projects that are going to come along where you don't want to be in that position. You want to see where that's being done right now? Take the taxi industry, and as old-fashioned a business as there ever was. Today it's being turned upside down in countries all over the world. Why? Solely because a few tech experts sitting around looked at the stodgy taxi companies and the monopoly that they thought each of them had in their locales and concluded the model was all wrong. So high-tech companies, such as Uber and Lyft and a number of others, have stolen business from an industry that failed to adapt. These disruptive new companies have approached a classic problem, getting from point A to point B by using mathematical algorithms that factor in hundreds of potential variables. And then they test the data that they get from those algorithms in real time, and they are able to create a vastly improved user experience. Think about that term, a vastly improved user experience. You win and retain clients if you improve their ultimate user experience. The lessons that Uber and Lyft teach us is the following. Smarter software leads to better customer experiences, which leads to better data, which leads eventually to even more satisfied clients. Many of you in this room have already begun to gather data to find the answers that will guide your companies towards this new paradigm. Some of you may leave this room and start down that road tomorrow. By committing your company to adopting these new technologies, you will ensure an exciting future for current and new generations of your firm. And perhaps in the very near future, your firm will proudly announce, as Virginia-based Draper Aden Associates recently did, that they said, "We are not your father's engineering firm. We are a technology firm now." So what does this all mean to me? That's the question. Well, one clear message is this. The nature of work in the construction industry is changing. The need for high-level technical skills will grow every passing year, even on the construction site. And if you are a construction executive, you're being presented with the business choice of a lifetime. Stay as you are, continue to compete in a low bid, low profitability environment, or choose to adopt new tools that will allow your company to offer a range of exciting value-added services to your clients. Services that will bring greater efficiency to your operations. Services that will attract a new generation of employees who are demanding that technology be a part of their work lives. And services that will increase your market share on the way to improving profitability. If you're an architect or an engineer, this presentation should raise serious concerns. Without tools that enable your firms to offer more than existing design services, the future appears less friendly. Construction firms are already adding sophisticated BIM services, and soon some of you have started, and many more of you will join the design-build methodology and begin to hire your own sophisticated design professionals and offer one-stop shopping to owners who will welcome the benefits of this methodology. There'll be challenges ahead as many of you begin to create the new paradigm for the industry. But in the very near future, it will be up to each of you to make a crucial choice for your company or your institution, one that will determine whether you and your colleagues will join the construction revolution. It is now and will increasingly become a brave new world. And those of you who wholeheartedly embrace the new technologies discussed this morning will be at the forefront of a 21st century industry while serving as enlightened leaders guiding your organizations towards a very lofty goal. Thank you for sharing your time this morning.